My name is Paul Griffin. Excuse my English. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present our company project, and also to thank you for what you're doing for Asturias, which I think is wonderful. I arrived in Asturias on holiday 30 years ago, and I couldn't find my return ticket, so I'm still here. It's an incredibly beautiful region for those of you who are listening in on streaming, and I would strongly recommend you come and visit if you ever have the opportunity. And thank you for that. Now, into my presentation. What I'd like to do is to explain very briefly, who we are. Basically, MBA is a company which was founded in Asturias, which remains in Asturias, and which has, like we're doing today, has reached out to the rest of Spain, to Iberia, to Portugal, and to other countries, and with its business model, and to create, I would say, a connection in healthcare among these different countries in which we're currently working. Unlike the other companies that you've been listening to today, we are not a manufacturer. We're more in the services industry. Our service, as you can read from the slide, basically we started out working in orthopedics, providing initially product for surgery, for orthopedic surgery, meaning hips and knees that need replacing, and fracture systems to resolve difficult, complex fractures or orthopedic needs. And basically what we have been doing is we teach the surgical team. We train the surgical team, we guide the surgical team, and we supply them through the whole process. This is something that we identified very early on in my first days when I was working almost 40 years ago in this industry, in the medical industry. We would give the surgeon a leaflet about a power tool to be used in the OR in Japanese and say, "Doctor, you understand how this works." And they would look at you and they would never say no. But usually what happened was that there was a breakdown between actually the technology they were receiving and their ability to use it. And we decided it was time to shorten the distance and to create a stronger service link with these customers, train them how to use the product properly, do cadaver labs or plastic bone model surgeries with the surgical team, that's the nursing staff and the surgeons, so that when they actually got to the patient, they knew exactly what they were doing. So a little bit about our history. We started the company, as I said, by serendipity here in Asturias, and we are very pleased to continue here 30 years ago now. And slowly, gradually, we've expanded. We became a national company very, very quickly. We would initially work with independent distributors who would carry our product and others too. And our focus was very quickly to get to work directly with the customers that we were supplying the product to without a filter in between, because we saw the need that teaching was very, very important. And this is relevant to what our challenge is today, because this is a continuity of this process on a more elevated platform. And basically, we've expanded in territory, we expanded in areas of product, and also expanded in the areas that we work in the hospital, including surgery, anesthesia, with wonderful inventions that really have changed the way surgeons operate today in the countries that we operate. To give you some idea, I mean, we're not as big as some of you other guys who've been presenting today, but 55 million is what, but we're ambitious. We want to grow. We want to join you in that bigger league. But you can see the numbers are quite impressive. 15,000 references. What does that mean? SKUs. That if you go for a knee surgery, for example, and I hope you don't need one, but should you need one, that you have to understand that the surgeon is operating knees, hips, spines, whatever comes in the door, and he has to understand implicitly what to do at each particular moment of the operation for the patient to come out of that operation with a successful result. What that means is he will choose from a catalogue of product that probably is close to 300 SKUs that he will need to select 3 products from. And he'll need to get them right if the product is to work. And the product will have a long life in that patient. And so what our focus is to guide that surgeon through that process so that when he gets to that decision, that he is absolutely certain that he chooses the right product every time. So training is fundamental. Our offices here are the silos, which are on the Pecuaria, the avenue here, which was for the cattle industry, but we've reconverted into the medical industry. The silos were never actually used, and so we changed the distribution inside, and we've created a training facility for surgical staff across the 5 countries that we have worked in, and working in currently in Southern Europe, mostly in Southern Europe. And so we have a constant flow of surgeons coming and going, teaching and learning, and sharing information on the best practices going forward in surgery. So that's the value that we bring basically to the product. It's not a distribution model per se. It's a service model. Now, in that process, and Pablo's with me today, we founded a few years ago an institute to separate itself from the commercial aspect of the business. We have salespeople who are out there to say, our knee is a better knee than the other guy's knee. And in many of these areas, these are commodity markets where the difference basically comes down to how much do you pay for it. And we've always stood back from that and said, well, we think that there's more to this than that. And the patient is fundamental to the success of the process, that the patient has the best possible result. And to do that, we took one step back, set up a parallel organization within the company, and basically its focus is to help the surgeons to develop their skills, to also to relate to other surgeons, to achieve best practices, and to transform that information, that learning curve that they go through when they do or begin a new surgery, that they're able to share their results with other surgeons on a platform, meaning that other surgeons can look in, shop window, walk past and say, that's interesting, I can see and publish this data. And so Pablo is helping those surgeons, those nurses, to be able to transform their patients into results, successes, failures, advice, and so always trying to get the best possible practice, gold standard, going forward for the surgeries in which we work. These are the areas that we are working in, but really I think you can imagine knee, hip, spine, trauma, extremities, anesthesia, surgical, and basically across the board in the hospital. But today what we've come here to talk about is the challenge. And what is the challenge? The environment. Basically, where in the environment we're working in has really changed dramatically over the last 10 years since the financial crisis. And we have a lot of things happening in society across the world. Basically, we have a population which is getting older, a population which is much more demanding and much better informed, and has access to tools that were never there in the past to really find out in an independent way what they want for themselves in terms of healthcare going forward. And so we have to meet those expectations. We have to take into account that people are living longer. And unfortunately, because of that, the available resources in terms of money provided by government in where we're talking about public healthcare is not increasing at the same rate. So we have to better use constantly our resources to be able to reach out, to provide the same results, to provide, for example, we are today selling product which we were selling 15 years ago at 1/3 of the price. And I'm sure there are very few industries represented here today that could say that. And unfortunately, this is the downward pressure that we're feeling. And this has also been a great initiative. You always have to look for the advantage in the disadvantage. And the advantage here for us was expand, grow, become bigger. And so with those challenges, taking into account, and you can also direct questions to Pablo afterwards if you want more information. Taking into account what we need to do, we need to be efficient. We need efficiency in terms of economy, and we need efficiency in terms of medical result as we go forward. We need to be able to do things faster and better and less invasive. Less invasive surgery is something which is very fashionable today. They call it minimally invasive surgery, MIS. And you have to be absolutely very careful, because what that means is, it means making very small incisions. People are very conscious about having a huge incision down the side of their hip. Can't wear a bathing costume, can't go to the beach anymore. For whatever reasons, aesthetic. There are other reasons, clinical. The risk of infection increases the bigger the entrance into the area that you're going to operate. And so the risks associated with minimally invasive are you don't see as well. So you don't have a good view of the geometry inside. And that can mean translate into increased damage to tissue, surrounding tissue. So we have to be very careful, and we have to fine-tune our training programs to make sure that those surgeons who are opting for more ambitious processes that will provide potentially better results and less complications are able to handle that with efficiency. Looking at the clinical pathways as well, the hospital is telling us, look, how can we have a patient 10 days in bed after a hip surgery when they're in a hospital environment? The risk of infection is a multiple of when they're at home. They don't enjoy hospital meals. Very few people, I don't know anyone wants to raise their hand and who's had a very good steak at any hospital recently. That doesn't usually happen. So they don't want to be there. So what we want to do is to get them out of hospital as fast as possible and home as fast as possible, but safely. So those are the considerations we have. And this is what our surgeons are telling us. The hospitals are saying a day in the hospital is 60, what is it? How much is it? Something like 8,000 euros a day just to keep a patient in hospital. I mean, if you go to a restaurant with 8,000 euros, you get a much better meal and probably a good hotel as well. But the overall cost of the specialists around the process, around the patient that have to be there, add to that cost. So we want to get them out of the hospital. The hospital wants to get them out of the hospital. The patient wants to get them out of the hospital. So what we're talking about in our program and our challenge today is to meet that. It's what we call fast-track programs, is to do the same job, is to do a successful surgery, but bring and unite together the specialists. And you'll find something about when you go to a hospital is that the surgeons of one area normally don't talk to the surgeons of another area. They think they're of a different race. Orthopedic surgeons are considered carpenters by neurosurgeons who are and you have this situation where we have to break these walls down and say, no, the focus is the patient. So we have to bring these people, bring these services together so that the patient gets the best possible treatment. We need to provide information, we need to provide recovery, we need to really provide the answers to the questions I was providing earlier. So in that, and to do that, we've created a program called the Walkway program. Basically walk out of the hospital and get out of there as soon as you can by bringing together the different departments, working together and sharing their information. And how does it work? Basically, I'll very quickly go through this because I want to get to the app, and I've taken too long already on the explanation. I apologize for that. it's to visit the center and to talk to the individual stakeholders in this, the anesthetist, the surgeon, the recovery unit, the nursing staff, and then also to bring the patient in. We want the patient to be an active part of their recovery. Normally they're intelligent people, well able to understand that they also can benefit from cooperating with the surgical team. So this is the goal. It's a digital platform providing information which is valid to the patient and to the professional on different platforms, on different levels. But it will be much easier if I can explain it to you. So basically on whatever platform, I think this is universal really, if it's Android, if it's iOS, this is to be provided, something that MBA will provide to its surgeons as a way of increasing the level of service to our customers. And it could be customized as well to include the hospital logo. And basically, it will be divided into patient information, what's relevant to the patient, so that will entail their recovery, and it will entail the professional, what they will need to know, data they need to collect, and where they can store it. So if we look at the patient, each patient, obviously, because of data protection, will need to provide them with a password which is non-identifiable only to that particular patient. They log in. And the first thing is, obviously, we need their consent, their informed consent. Very important in any surgical process is that the patient is fully aware of what they will be undergoing, and also in terms of participating in these kind of projects. Once they accept, they will have access to general information. Basically, this will be what it is that's going to happen to them, what implant, what it is, what process they will be going through. Pretty much standard information. But very important, because patients, many times when they go to the consultancy rooms, they spend maybe 5 minutes in there. They don't really understand what the surgeon's saying. And this way, in their own time, at home, they can review exactly what they will be undergoing. When the surgery has happened, well, there will be different levels of exercises, for example, before they go to surgery, because the fitter the patient is, the less heavy the patient is when they go to surgery, the faster the recovery, the better condition that the patient will be in. So obviously we will be reaching out to not just one hospital. This is in a different way, a program we already have set up in a hospital in Catalonia, and it's working extremely well. And it is the model for this process. It will be able to provide them with the videos, with the information that they can exactly understand what they will be going through or what is expected of them, and also their recovery after the surgery. What does it entail? I mean, obviously, it's the exercises, daily activities. Again, the same, the videos, the processes, so there are no surprises. And the idea, again, is to speed up the process to get the patient as quickly as possible to their home. And again, this is a kind of program that most of us have apps who run or walk or whatever, what the level of activity is, because that is an important part of the patient recovery process. The patient, we need to know what the patient thinks of the surgery, because many of the systems, perhaps you don't know, but the systems of how surgeons value their surgery is part of how the surgeons express the success or the failure of the surgery. For example, the phrase, the surgery was a success, but the patient died. I mean, we don't need that. We want the patient to say, I don't feel any pain, I'm out and about, I can do daily activities in a normal way, and very simple questions, questionnaires, levels of pain. And now let's go to what the clinical team would look from this. Again, the same entrance with a password, and the operating room management, This basically hinges on what one of our customers has come to us with, which allows the surgeon to plan in advance, meaning that he has everything that he needs there, because there are many companies, maybe there's 50 companies supplying him product at any one time, but he's able to access on one single program exactly what he needs for each surgery. Then he needs to plan the surgery. He needs to be able to, well, look at the x-rays. Is it the left or the right hip? Every now and again, someone gets operated on the wrong side. So to avoid simple errors, but at the same time to be able to plan, to onlay templates to see which is the correct size. I said earlier on there were something like 300 references for a surgery, of which you would need 3. Is that a patient calling?
No,
okay.
It was the YouTube channel calling.
Okay, so pre-op, basically what he needs to have before he starts the surgery. So all of this, it can be the theatre nurse, it can be the surgeon that does this. So if we've got all of this, we can go ahead. We don't want someone sitting in a taxi going over to a company to find that because the drapes are missing. Useful information, what are the characteristics of the product? To the patient, we were explaining what the product is. It's a knee and it's a hip, and how it works and how it will restore function and take away pain to the patient. But to the surgeon, they want to know, well, more. They want to know what the results are. Does it work in all these kind of patients? What are the limitations? So basically, we can provide them all of that on a simple platform. And the logistics after the surgery, that the nursing staff are able to identify what was used, because it's very important to be able to restore the product quickly and efficiently, so that for the next surgery, all of the sizes, all of the components are in place. And in summary, that's the tree. Basically, there are 2 areas, the patient area and the healthcare area. So that's it. Thank you.
Any question for Paul, for the APP? I know he will doing his best to answer in English.
I tried.
No? Okay, he will be, okay, one question.
And for those living outside Asturias, come to Asturias. It's beautiful, well worth a visit. And we have a lovely sunny day today.
For the presentation, is just a question more of curiosity, because it's about the speed of this process of the 4.0, the I4.0, because I heard or I read, I think, the internet that it say that in 15, 20 years, more than 80% of the surgeries will be made by robots. And I would like to know your opinion about that, if you think this is possible, true or not.
Yes, it is true. Of course it's true. And the world is going towards more sophistication. It's exponential. And looking at the platforms around today, information is being shared at a higher level and faster than ever before. So that means that an advance of some significance, a game change, a paradigm shift in the way that something is done, is very quickly shared with very, very, very many people across the world. And the brightest brains are working on eliminating all of the factors that could cause error. And one of those factors is the human factor, to the extent that, for example, in the United States, there are now robots. We have one that will operate a knee, and very successfully. And to give you an example, if you do a hip prosthesis, in other words, you're implanting a piece of metal inside the patient's femur, the process is first is to cut away an entrance into the femur from the top. And then what they do is they put in something like a file. It's called a rasp. It's like a file. And they have to get out of there the soft bone enough so that the metal will go in and fit tightly and won't move. It shouldn't be like a bell, because otherwise it would be any movement is pain. So it has to be very solid. So if you look at, and people have analyzed, where surgeons, very good surgeons, top surgeons, operate a patient, only 30% of the implant is actually in contact with bone. And that's where its fixation is. Using robotics, it goes to 75. So, there you are, you see. So, and again, the precision of the cuts, of where the cuts are made. Again, one is by sight, which is what the surgeon is using mostly, and he has an idea of the angle, and a very good idea. He really does know where it should fit, and he has a margin of error in some areas of 10, 15%, and then it becomes problematic. Then wear increases, points, there are higher concentrations of wear. That is a reality, but a robot will get it right every time. They will check the level of the tissue, the soft tissue, that it's tense enough to not to be lax so that the product doesn't pop out or something. So all of this information is really important, but it's still in its very early days. But in the States right now, in America, if you go to surgery and you go for one of these, or a hip or a knee, most people ask for a robot because they know that this error factor is less. And insurance companies, the premium is lower if they go for robot surgery. So this eventually filters over here, and we're starting to see it happen. That doesn't mean that surgeons operating by sight operate badly. No, they don't. Hundreds of thousands of implants are fitted every year here in Spain, very, very successfully, with follow-up past 20 years. So the results can be very good, but robotics will increase that, and we are working actively with that. But that will not take away from the one universal factor that joins all of this together, which is the patient. The patient is very human and will need very human treatment along the way, and will be monitored, perhaps by machines, but at the same time will have a human brain watching exactly what's happening, and they will need to access that information. So we need that platform to be able to help us improve the way we service our customers. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.